Hello and welcome to episode 49 of the Inventive Marketing Club. We're here every Friday morning so we can build a better marketing strategy together. I'll say hello, Claire.
Hi,
How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. I'm really excited because I've just opened an email being awarded a load of hedging shrubs. So next November I'm going to have a planting weekend. So I'm really excited.
It's fab. Just after last week, we're talking, it was Earth Day, and then you want to plant a load of hedging to help wildlife suck in that carbon, and you've got that basically a good deal on hedging. It's amazing.
Yeah, definitely check out the Woodland Trust because they're giving away trees.
They are. I'm very excited. I'm going to apply myself. I think what was it called? More hedge more.
More hedge from the Woodland Trust. So
yeah,
definitely get your applications in.
And also, joining us today is Heidi Chamberlain-Jones from Eat, Sleep, Live and Minx Media. Which hat are you going to come in today, Minx Media or Eat, Sleep, Live?
I think I've got my Eat, Sleep, Live badge on, but I'm going to have my Minx Media hat on for these purposes. Yes.
Right. Well, so I've known Heidi for a long time, but more recently we've been working on their website for Eat, Sleep, Live and really taking your quite highly trafficked website, which has a lot of consumers who come to it to find out information about the local area, see what events are going on, and there's directory listings for B&Bs, restaurants, pubs, that sort of stuff. I mean, it gets a lot of traffic, doesn't it? We had the job of converting it from, it was still WordPress, so we're moving it from one WordPress system to another, really changing the whole design, and then basically all the niggles you had with the previous website, all the things you couldn't do, we put those into place and basically re-architected the whole lot. It was a big undertaking, wasn't it? Took longer than both of us expected, but really pleased with the result. And it's still ongoing, still developing. So I've been working with Heidi a lot on that. But also Heidi and I have been doing webinars together on various different subjects, mainly for her tourism audience. And I think they've been going really well. And one of the last ones we did was on PR, and I've been waiting, to find that, to bring that topic onto the club. So I thought, Heidi, come on and talk to us. Share that presentation. It's really, really good. I think a lot of people will get a lot out of it. So perhaps can I hand over to you? I'll put your slides up on screen. You take over and you tell us all about PR and the good work that you do.
Sure. Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. I'm Heidi Chamberlain-Jones, which never fits on anything. So do think of me as Heidi. And as you can see, I have a big tourism website, the official portal for Herefordshire. So if you were coming as a visitor to Herefordshire, you would look on eatsleepliveherefordshire.co.uk for places to eat, sleep and enjoy around the county, which is at the massive site that Ben's been working on. And we look after approximately 300 other businesses who are always constantly looking for ways to get into the newspaper and get some PR, get some national press, get articles in magazines, and this transcends into any kind of business. And what I'd like to do today is to give you some tips and tricks on how to collate your PR and what makes good PR, where to send it, how to send it, and try and tie that up in a little nutshell for you, because it seems a bit of a dark art, and it can be, because nothing's ever guaranteed. If you employ a PR agent, sometimes you kind of think, gosh, nothing much seems to have happened this month, because they're sending things out and you think, well, they haven't got anything in the press. It's not like buying advertising space where you guarantee that spend, you guarantee that space, and you guarantee what goes in it. If that's what you want, you need to buy the space. PR is very much about tailoring what you want to say to the platform that is appealing to your audience and building relationships. So it's a long drawn out process. So let's give you some help on how you can achieve your PR for yourself, and sometimes doing less will achieve more. So why is it important for your business, and what do you understand about what PR means? PR can be referred to as lots of things, the P and the R. It can be public relations, it can be press releases, but generally it's about generating that feel-good factor about your company and putting that into the press and media. And of course there are so many platforms to do that now. There are newspapers, news sites, different industry sites, sectors. There's all sorts of ways that you can do that. We have a section on our own website. You might have a section on your own website, and that's a great place to have not just blogs but news. So let's look at what makes good news material and good press material, and what will grab the attention of editors and journalists, and also using bloggers and influencers and weeding out who the good ones are. Because certainly in tourism, or if you've got a business where somebody can experience what you've got, and it might even be more industry led, if you want to send somebody a product to test and to get that featured somewhere in a particular publication, then you want to send it out to somebody who's got a big following that's going to shout about it. Okay, so let's look at the next bit of information. Thanks, Ben. So where should you send your press releases to? We'll come back into how you should compose them in a minute, but where should you send them to and how should you communicate it? And I'm literally going to go through this slide with you. So first of all, what is your subject matter? If you're in a particular sector, there's no point blasting out a press release that is generic to every platform there is, because it's not going to be of interest to everybody. And it's quite onerous to do that, to send it everywhere. You might think, well, I'm a local business, I'm going to send it to my local newspaper. Well, let's have a look at who you should send it to and why they will feature it. Because if you are a business, theoretically, perhaps you should be advertising with whoever it is. And if your newspaper is anything like the Hereford Times is in Herefordshire, you'll find that the editorial department very rarely speaks to the advertising department. They all see each other as separate when really they should work together. But let's see how we can capture that editorial ear. So you need to tailor each press release to whoever the recipient is. So find out, if let's take the newspaper as an example, find out who is writing about your topic. If you're in sports, who is the sports writer? If they're the commerce and the commercial feature writer, then find out who that is. Send something to them specifically. And when you send that press release, don't just send it as a generic thing, personalize it to them and say, hi, I notice you're running stories on this. There's nothing more flattering to a writer than somebody making them feel like they've taken notice of what they're writing. And they're thinking, this person understands what I'm about. They've taken time to read what I'm writing. So have a look at who's writing what, have a little look at how you can personalize that email to them. It's only a couple of lines of intro, but it will make all the difference. And figure out that you have to do that for each publication or platform that you're sending it to. Honestly, unless you're just uploading it to a blog site like Reddit or something like that, which is a different kettle of fish, you need to personalize it. There is a real person at the end of that email. So treat it as though you were sending them a letter. You want something from them at the end of the day for free. You've taken time and effort to generate this, so make sure that your end result is the best it can possibly be. If I receive something personally and I know that person's made some effort, I'll be far more engaged with it. And also try and make sure that it doesn't look as though you're sending it to lots of people, because these publications and platforms want to feature news. Now, if you shorten that by just one letter, it's what's new. It's not new once it's been featured somewhere else. It's then secondhand news. So everybody wants to feel like they're first. Everybody wants to feel like it's unique to them. So even though you might send it to several different sources, perhaps pick and choose where you're sending it to. Perhaps just one local paper, if you've got more than one, that handles your type of news a bit better than maybe another one. And then maybe look at sending it out if it's worthy of national press. That starts to get a little bit scary and you think, I couldn't possibly approach these people. They're just writers looking for information and communication. That's what you're feeding them with. Nowadays, publications and platforms, they can't send people out in the field. It's all about citizen journalism. So it's about what you send them and what they can then turn into a better story. So you have to do some research, I'm afraid. So be selective. It'll be an ongoing thing. Get a spreadsheet together and have your lists and your names and your contact details, and make sure that you are updating those constantly, because most of these people are freelance. They tend not to be employed by the platforms that they're on. So they just tend to have a particular relationship with those platforms. So if you are then in 6 months' time looking for that same person, just look them up, maybe on LinkedIn, maybe just Google them and see who they're writing for at the moment. Once you're in their orbit, they'll start coming to you for things if you've given them good quality information. So if your press release is about business to business stuff, if you are a product developer, or if you're manufacturing something and it's about B2B, don't send it to a consumer facing publication. Don't send it to your newspaper, because it's not of interest to them. Send it to something that's in the business to business world and that's quite niche to what you want to sell and promote. Just really hone it down, be a bit canny and be a bit clever about it. Less will be more. If you're to the consumer, if you're B2C and you want to grab a larger audience that way, then think about where you need to send that. So if your news is only relevant to local readers, choose local publications and more regional things and platforms. There's a lot of great information platforms that are local and regional. We have a couple in the Herefordshire area where I'm from. But the national platforms are just as good. So it all depends what you think, and think big. Why not? Take a risk and chance something. If you're doing something really clever, take a risk on it, but be prepared for the comeback. You might start a tsunami, which would be amazing. So also don't forget, these newspapers often put things online, which means that they're networked between several digital organizations. For example, NewsQuest, which owns many publications, and Archant, once it goes up online with one of them, it will be spread across quite a few of them. So you'll get a lot of coverage, and what you want really is a link back to perhaps your website so people can read more about you. So then you have to make sure that that is in tip-top condition for you to present your business to that bigger world. So once you start doing PR, make sure you've got all your ducks in a row for the rest of your business. Thank you, Ben. Let's move on to the next. There's never any guarantee, as I say. Your press release may or may not get published. And some of it is down to the skill of what you've written, but don't be afraid that your writing skills may not completely be up to scratch. We'll go through a little bit about how to present your press release in a moment. But if you can give certain salient information, I do laugh sometimes, because quite often I write things and it'll be presented in exactly the same format. It'll literally be cut and pasted into the newspaper, and then the journalist will put their name to it and say, oh, we've created an article on, and I'm thinking, no, that's my work. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's a result. But if somebody rewrites your work, as long as it's factually correct, happy days, and they have tailored it to their audience. That's wonderful. And also it'll look and sound slightly different to where else it's featured, because you don't want the same thing appearing everywhere else. That actually turns people off then. So let's have a look at the subject matter. It's got to be newsworthy. And what might seem newsworthy to you may not be as newsworthy to other publications and platforms. So what do we mean by newsworthy? It's unique, it needs to be a little bit dramatic, and you can make it dramatic in the way that you present it. We'll talk about how to headline things in a minute. It's got to be different, and you sort of think, oh gosh, how am I different? What is different? And even thinking of what might make news in your business, because your business is your everyday life. You may sort of think, I've got nothing to say. So quite often it's somebody else's idea to say, oh, you should tell people about this. So perhaps ask somebody else's opinion, appoint somebody in your business to look at it from a slightly divorced view and say, is there anything that you think we should create a press release about. Some people create specific events and activities. It could be that you've done some charity work, that you've had a specific association with somebody, soft stories that you've been going 10 years. Is that really news? It could be news if you've particularly come out of some sort of adversity. It's how you package it that makes the difference. So if you've got new members of staff, you quite often see solicitors will say, oh, so-and-so's been appointed for this, that and the other. Well, that's great, but do I really care if I'm not using that solicitor as a member of the public? No, maybe not, but maybe how it's packaged and how that person specializes in something, or perhaps what their credentials are, or perhaps a case that they have looked after that's been particularly high profile, that then makes that press release a bit more credible. Expansions, they're really business promotions, which really should be advertising led. So it's what is newsworthy and what is not. So some great things are, if you've won an award, if your business has won an award, that's hopefully the whole point that you've entered the award is to give you something to shout about. Community projects, this is especially at the moment, if you've been involved in supporting a community project, then please shout about it. And especially if you've been involved with a charity, it gives that charity some coverage as well. Landmark achievements, innovation, these are all big topical things, and you should choose your press release platforms wisely to cover those stories. And if you can get a bit of a celebrity involved with something, then all the better, for the right reasons, hopefully. So if you've been to an awards and you know that you're going to receive an award, be prompt when you send out the press release. And the way to do that is to prep your press release in advance and put the main structure to it, and then fill in the gaps last minute if there's anything that you particularly want to add about the event that you are at the night before. And then 9 o'clock the next morning, shum, 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 it's ready to go. So prepare any news that's going to be date sensitive. Otherwise, a week later, it's not news, and the newspaper may have already covered that and missed you out. So be the leader in what you want to send out, and be realistic. Just because it's interesting to you, just make sure that you make it interesting to everybody else. Okay, thanks, Ben. So let's think about the content now and what does make it interesting. And I like to work by these 5 basic rules, and hopefully these will be of use to you in composing your content. Have a punchy, sensational headline. Now, this is quite often really difficult, and I say no more than 5 words. So you've got your sentence that you're trying to hone down. It's a bit like if you've ever done an elevator pitch in your networking events when we did them face to face years ago. That almost seems old fashioned now, doesn't it? The elevator pitch. And I have a 7-second elevator pitch tutorial that we do. But this is about headlining, and it's a similar concept. Instead of trying to explain it in a huge sentence, condense it into 5 words. Think about the tabloids and how they have this really punchy headline, and you think, yeah, but that just sounds daft. It won't sound daft. Pick out the key words and put them into the subject line of the email that you're sending that recipient. That's what will hook them in. So paragraph 1 under your headline might be in bold, and it should encapsulate the whole story of what you want them to know about. This isn't a novel. You're not taking them on a lovely journey and up and down, and this isn't an emotional thing that we're drawing people in with. It's bang, it's punchy. Whoever the recipient is wants to know instantly what it's about, whether they're going to take it up, whether they're going to dismiss it, whether you've captured their interest straight away. So the first paragraph, which just needs to be a couple of sentences long, maybe 30 words long, should encapsulate the whole story. Then the main body text can then go into the more descriptive side of things and keep it in chronological order. how that first came about, what the follow through was, give it a beginning, middle, and an end. So fill it with factual detail. A lot of stories, a lot of press writers, they love statistics. So if you have got any statistics to put in there, if you're the first in a certain market, then quote how big the market is. If you're very niche in something, again, give some statistics. People want to be able to quantify something. How do they know that you're the best if there's only 2 of you in the market? I quite often laugh when I hear somebody say, our business has gone up by 100%. Well, did they start at nothing? Every business goes up by 100% within its first sale. So it's how you present it, but that can also be cleverly spun. You've heard of the word spin, perhaps, when it comes to politics. Spin can be applied to press releases and stories as well to make them a little bit more interesting. So be creative in your descriptions. Use some really good, engaging language. And if you find that you're not great at that, employ somebody to do it. They're worth their weight. If you are reasonably good at that, you might find that you tend to use a certain family of words. And this is quite common when we're writing lots of things. You can sometimes tell who's written it because they tend to use the same words all the time. So use the internet, use a thesaurus, and look at different descriptive words for what you want to say, different adjectives, all sorts of different ways of saying the same thing through your press release. Don't use repetition because it will be really obvious. And be enthusiastic. Think about how you would feel if somebody was talking to you in a monotone voice and you completely switch off. If I didn't change my tone on this presentation, and you wouldn't get anything out of it. Now, I'm quite a lively person, and that's what you want to inject in your press release. Be enthusiastic. Imply that what you're doing is the best thing. Don't be afraid. You can't over egg it in words because people are only reading it. They're losing the sense of visual presentation. So you have to put all that energy into your words. So the last paragraph needs to recap on what you've written. So it's like a sign off. So you've taken people through the process, through the journey of what you were talking about, and then sign off in a nutshell. And if you want to, put a call of action in there, a call to action. And a call to action is what you want people to do, a little bit like advertising, but what you might want people to do if they're interested in finding out more. Now, editors will choose to include that or exclude it. So you might find that that bit doesn't get featured because it's a little bit commercial. But if you don't put it in, you won't stand a chance of it getting featured. Even if it's a sign off with your website because you want people to go and look at more on your website, you stand a big chance of that on a press release, which is great if it goes online because it's a hyperlink to your website. Hopefully, some people have a rule that they don't do it, but many press sites do. And have a section under your editor's notes. Generally, I say don't have a press release that's more than an A4 page. And if you can include the editor's notes in that, then great. So what are editor's notes? Editor's notes are a little bit in a nutshell about who your business is, how long you've been going, who the founders are, who the point of contact to find out more is. Always include a photograph, who is in the photograph, and any information that you want them to know with anything that's associated within that press release. Keep it brief, but if editors want to embellish on what you've sent them, it's handy for them to have those notes, and they can do that without having to contact you perhaps, or maybe they just want to find some detail that you haven't put on there. But put some useful editor's notes. State the obvious. Do it every time you send it to them. Don't assume that they will remember who you are. Don't assume that they're happy to trawl through the last time you sent them a press release. Make it easy for them. If you want somebody to buy or feature anything that you've written, or in any principle with business, make it easy for somebody to connect and engage. Okay, and now we come to the last bit of information, which is how to package it up. So you need to create a hook. So all this information that we've got now, who to send it to, how to write your press release, which are the key things, what might make it interesting. So let's look at this hook that will hook people in. So you sent it to somebody specific, you're tailoring that hook according to them. And here's a couple of examples. So you're sending it to a local newspaper. Think about who the readers are. Is the newspaper predominantly rural, or is it a city-based newspaper? So who are the people that are reading the newspaper? What's the demographic of that publication? This is really important. You've got a 20th birthday party, and it might seem irrelevant, but suddenly, if you package it as local company defies high street slums, or local company overcomes COVID hospitality crisis, something like that, it suddenly becomes newsworthy. And you might think, well, everybody's going through the same as me. But if you're the only person saying it, you're the only person it's happening to, and you're the only person that's going to be featured. And they will use you as an example. So many news sites are wanting people to come forward as examples, and people aren't brave enough. Be brave, be that example. Let's look at another example, which is more B2B related. So Myco, which is my company, celebrates its annual awards. You're holding an awards. It might be your internal awards for your people, and that's immaterial to anybody really outside your company, apart from the people in it. So how can we make it relevant, and how can we get some mileage out of all the time and effort and resource that you put into these awards? Suddenly, if you package it as industry icon presents outstanding achievements, that sounds much more interesting. And then you go on to say who your awards were for and what they were for, and it becomes newsworthy. So I hope you can see these headlines, these short 4 or 5 word headlines that suddenly are really punchy. So start thinking, take out the fog and start thinking in those terms. So you may want your awards to have coverage in a magazine. So what's the best way to do that? What are magazines all about? Great pictures. So if you've got a regional publication, most counties have, and you want to be featured there, or some sort of industry publication, make sure at the event that you've staged that you take really good pictures, and not pictures far away, pictures, head and shoulders pictures of people looking into the camera and smiling. Tip is no more than 4 people in an image, because the picture will become too small as they try to fit it on the page. With too many people in there, you won't see it properly. Learn how to use your camera phone maybe. Sometimes it's even worth investing in a photographer to come to your event. But somebody who's good with a camera, take the names of the people that are in the pictures and submit those with the photos. Obviously, ask the people's permission if they're happy for you to use them in their PR, in your PR. So a lifestyle magazine loves these sort of things. You quite often see them and think, how did they get that in there? They literally, businesses just sent them through to the editor, and the editor went, thank you very much. You've made my job really easy. Happy days. And just keep everything as if you were the consumer. What would make it interesting to you, as opposed to it just being blah, blah, blah. Build relationships, maybe even talk to the editor at the end, try and contact them, ring them. Don't be afraid. They're just people doing a job at the end of the day. Build that relationship with them. Be a little bit reverent with them. Don't tell them how to do their job. Don't tell them that they should be featuring this. Just say, I think I've got something of real interest to your readers. Can you tell me whether this would be interesting? How can I send it to you? What's the best way for me to do this? And they're generally very kind. They'll give you their email address and they'll say, send it through and we'll see what we can do. And once you've sent it, perhaps follow through again. Okay, Ben, I think that's almost it. I don't think
just a little bit there, another slide or two at the end here.
Okay. So the media, there are so many different platforms. Yeah, yes, thank you. This is really, where do I start? Where do I go? Well, have a think about who you want to, if you're new to this, think local perhaps, because if you're a business in an area, it's bound to be interesting to the local business community. So cut your teeth on something local, maybe with your newspaper. Then look at the regional magazines, then look at your industry magazines and who this might be relevant to. Also think of social media. Try and find some of these writers and feature writers on social media. I achieved a great bit of press coverage for an architect client in Grand Designs magazine, simply because we put a tweet out and we linked it back to a story that we put on their website, and we put the right hashtags in and we tagged a couple of the publications in, and the editors were looking, they monitor the social media and they went, that's great, and they followed it up and we ended up with a 2-page feature. Priceless. So think laterally about these things. If you're going to put it on your website, and a press release is always a great thing to put on your website if you've got a news area, brilliant for SEO traffic. I think Ben would agree with that. Perhaps we can talk about that a little bit more afterwards. Include some keywords in it. And when these other publications are looking for articles and items and people that are thought leaders, as you will be considered in these topics, they will find your story on your website. It will gravitate towards that, it'll drive that traffic. Radio is also a great opportunity for PR. Be that person that the radio contacts if you're the local font of knowledge on something, or the regional font of knowledge. Imagine BBC contacting you. It does happen. They're all just people, as I say. Why shouldn't they speak with you? Put yourself on their radar, put yourself forward, engage with whoever the presenters and hosts are on those shows if you're on social media, because that's where news predominantly is put out. It's put out there first. Research who your bloggers are. Who is writing a lot about these topics, and who could you collaborate with to get your subject out there about your business. Online sites, I mentioned Reddit. There's a lot of other blog sites that might be interested. Just literally just Google them and research them, and just think strategically about it. Don't try and do all this in one go. It's a bit like marketing. Everybody thinks they ought to do everything in one go. Just start off with one thing at a time. Do it well, do it in bite-sized chunks. You'll become more adept at it, then more ambitious and confident at it, and then you can go up that ladder and reap the rewards. And that's me from Minx Media on marketing and PR. Minx Media is my sister company to the tourism company. It's actually the mother company, not the sister company. And we do a lot of sales, marketing, training. We also act as a consultancy and agency.
Yeah, I'll leave that up there, Heidi, so people can take it down. Do have a look at both the Eat, Sleep, Live Herefordshire website and Minx Media. So thank you, Heidi. Let me take this off the screen. A few questions here. Relationships, you kind of ended on relationships, and I think that is the key aspect to PR, because it's the one thing that if you can have great news, and if you're not sharing that, and you don't know who to share it with, and it's not getting through, there's no point. It's not going to do anything. I mean, do you have any tips on how you might find people? And I know it's kind of the thing that takes time, and obviously you'd say, well, really, you need to use someone who's built up those relationships already, and I would agree. But maybe just starting off, just to test when when you've got a new company? And any key tips that you recommend?
Yeah, I find that LinkedIn is a great resource for finding these people. I did an exercise recently myself where we wanted to update our own database in the travel industry. So I went onto LinkedIn and literally looked in the search for travel writers, and you can do the same for any industry topic, and it will bring up not everybody, but it will bring up people that have got in their profile that they are travel writers or whoever it is, whatever subject that they are part of and who they write for. So that was a great source. And then what I did was connected with them and sent them a message with that connection. Didn't just say I'd like to connect, because my actual profile doesn't really depict all the elements on which would be relevant to them. And then I direct messaged them and said, look, if you're ever writing about Herefordshire and the Wye Valley, we're a great source for information. I see that you like writing about activities, or I took a bit of note as to what they've been writing about, and then tailored even that short message. And the amount of response I had back, I've got a huge database again now of fresh, new, current contacts that I can send my press releases out to or invite them on press visits. And that's really useful. If you've got a product, let's say you've developed a great new hand cream or moisturizer, and you want somebody to know about it, you can write as much as you like, but experiencing that and feeling and touching and smelling it is never going to be the same. So you can post. PR is about sending products out to people as well. Find who those people are, build those relationships. Who doesn't love getting something new in the post? And before you know it, you're featured in the Mail on Sunday's You magazine, because all those products are just ones that people have sent in. It's not ones they've researched, it's ones they've been sent.
Yeah, and I think that's what it seems to be about. You know, if you don't shout, if you don't stand out there, they're not going to come and find you, because everyone else is flinging content their way. And so, you know, it's really useful for them. And I think actually that comes back to the packaging, repackaging, or packaging up a piece to go out. You've got a bit of news and you've got to think, well, how can I make this stand out? How can I make this interesting? And I think that is really interesting, because a lot of people might just put out a bit of information because they think, well, okay, yeah, like you said, we're having a birthday or we've won this award. And it's like, who cares? Yeah. The way you've rephrased those is brilliant, because you're just trying to find, well, what's the, who are they working against? Is it like a David and Goliath thing? Is it what's the story here? And encapsulating those 5 or 6 words is brilliant. And I think that's the hard thing to do.
It is hard. My friend calls me the wordy birdie, because she constantly rings me and says, oh, I need a headline for such and such. And I think, but I work in such short time frames. My mind, I think, works in just individual words, and you go, yeah, blub, 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 blub. It's taking all the fog out of it and just write it down on paper, and then take out the and the and the this and the that, literally those linking words, and condense it into what the key words about that topic are. Start taking notes of headlines in newspapers. This isn't what your press release will be about, but the headlines and how people put them together is how you can train yourself to do it and make it more sensational. I know on our Eat, Sleep, Live site, on our news section, we've only got a certain amount of characters to play with on the headlines for those stories. So we have to keep them short. And my colleague Amanda, she's not a creative writer, but she's really learned how to create a headline and condense it. And then it kind of, the rest you can wax lyrical about, let yourself go. But just try and take the fog out. The linking words, the there's and the ands and the is and the what's, and you don't need those. You just need 5 words.
Yeah, no, it's great. Oh, you mentioned search optimization, and that's something that's come up quite big on a previous webinar, actually, when we had Chris Richards on, who was he was giving us his professional assessment of our new website. Lots of tasks that Claire and I are working through on that. PR was one of the big ones. And actually, we're going to be talking to you later about that. We're hoping to work with Heidi on getting some PR for the club and going out there, because it really is not my expertise. You know, I'm everything to do with the web, digital. I understand the role of PR, I really do, but in terms of delivering it, I've got to lean on someone else for that, and Heidi. So we'll be talking later about that. But actually, relatedly, I want to come back to SEO. But I've just thought, if you want to work with someone in PR, I mean, I know you. We've seen your output. It's great results. So of course I'm going to work with you. But if maybe the subject area you're in doesn't quite fit, maybe we're more scientific and we need to go into certain scientific publications, how do you find that PR person that you're going to work with? What would you look for there?
I think that's a really, really good question, because some people are good at writing more technical information and some people are good at more storytelling. And I've certainly found this over my literary life, if you like, because I'm a publisher by trade. And yeah, I think that is really key. So how do you find those people? I think you just need to look at the publications that you want to appear in, and then look at who's writing the stories. Sometimes they will say who the source of the information was, but I think you almost, if you're in that world, if you're in that, let's say you're in a technical field, you will probably tend to communicate in a technical way. So to find a PR person, you have to say to them this, when you're opening this out to the universe and you're looking to hire somebody, you might put on LinkedIn, I'm looking for a PR professional with experience in this field and this kind of writing with a proven track record, and interview your PR people as you would a recruit, because you wouldn't want somebody working for your business whose skills were completely divorced.
No, absolutely. They're representing you, aren't they? So you have to trust them.
Yes. I have a destination PR expert who works alongside us for our tourism side of things. But it wouldn't be her forte. She can turn her hand to a lot of things, as can I. But when it comes to certain things, it's not my bag. And I have to say to somebody, I can't do that. You're not going to get the best out of me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think when you recruit your PR person, you almost have to do it as if you were interviewing for your business, the candidate, and put the criteria down. Somebody who's experienced in that field, who understands it, but who can translate what you want into that reader-friendly language.
Yeah. Thank you. So back on SEO, I know it's really important. And you were talking about reusing content for PR. I mean, there's a couple of aspects really with PR that's useful. Is number one, backlinks. For SEOs, backlinks. High quality, trusted backlinks, not just any old backlinks. So obviously getting into the right publication, getting the link on the article. So, because as you were saying, a lot of editors or the author won't go out and seek out your website to put it in there. They'll put in your company name. They'll probably make sure your company name is mentioned, which is good. It's considered a citation. So Google will take some aspect of that into account. But what you want is a link to the homepage. Now, you were just saying, just make sure the link goes in there, put it in the call to action at the bottom. Is that the only place? Could you potentially put hyperlink within the copy? Do they accept that, or do they tend to get rid of them?
I think if you put it through, I tend to put it through the copy. And then also it means that they can look at that further information through the hyperlinks as well.
Yes,
so it's a nice little prompt for them, and they become more engaged with it. I think if they're writing for a digital platform, they'll be more inclined to put the links in there. If they're writing for a printed platform, they'll be less inclined to put the links in. But if you don't give them the hyperlinks, they've got no chance of doing them. They're not going to source them for themselves. And again, it depends on relationships. It depends on the kind of publication, what they say that what their protocol is.
Yeah, they'll have a set of rules, won't they?
Yeah, they will. Sometimes they'll say, no, that's deemed as marketing, that's deemed as advertising.
Yeah.
If you want that, you have to pay for it, and you can decide if it's worth paying for. yeah, I would always put them in and put them through the copy. I think that's a really good idea. As with SEO terms, as long as you can make it flow, as long as you can write it, because if that is going to go up online, then when anybody is Googling, if it's a digital platform, they'll be grateful for the SEO terms because it's sending traffic to their page.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if it's relevant. Well, and that's another interesting thing. Obviously, if you can get a bit of PR on a digital platform, then it's going to get visibility, it's going to get traffic on that platform, plus the backlinks. So you're getting traffic that way, plus this sort of potential for search optimization benefit in the future, this link juice coming through, which is great. So that's really increasing the trust. But actually, it could be, you were talking about repurposing the PR article that you've written. You could put that on your blog, couldn't you?
Yes.
You could potentially also link back to the original article where you saw it. Some tip we spoke about on the webinar for your tourism group was about actually taking a quote. So not putting the whole article necessarily, but putting a quote from this publication. Obviously it's about you, but you put a quote in there and then link back to that article. So you've then got an article that draws attention to that post on this other publication that you can share with your audience. You're giving them a backlink, which sort of brings some credibility to them, and then people can read the whole article and flow through to your site. So it's creating this nice sort of feedback loop. I quite like that. Do you think there's any risk in sort of repurposing the PR piece en masse and just putting the whole press release that you submitted to the publication on your website, or would you edit it slightly?
I would edit it, because you're talking, when you put it on your website, you're talking in a different person, for example, in a different tense, aren't you? You might be, you might talk about it in the first person as opposed to the third person. So I would, when you send out a press release, I would send it out as if you were a PR agent writing it to the editor. And so you talk about in the third person, you talk about in terms of this company, blah, 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 not we and us, it's they and them.
Yes.
So if you're on your website, you would talk about we and us, possibly, if that's the tone of your website.
Yeah, so it depends on how you're writing the news. Yeah,
yes,
that makes sense.
Yes, I think if it's your news, then you would write in the first person and you would personalize it and you would own it in that way. It's your news.
Just coming back to actually related to links with social engagement, obviously a lot of these media outlets might have their own social accounts, so they're going to push every piece out on there, so you might get a bump in traffic from that, or new follows on your accounts. But also along with the having a share on your blog, I would share that article on your own social media. So make sure you share the particular post that they're sending out, because you want to promote them. You know, they're promoting you, but if you promote them, it's a bit like having a testimonial. You're getting someone else to say how good you are or what you've done is great without you having to say that. I like the idea of doing that. Let's see, I've got a few more questions here. Claire came up with some good ones this morning. Go for it.
Is there, like, what is the lifespan of like a news story? Is it like a week before it's old news, or do you have a couple of days, or is it a month?
These days when everything does work so quickly, especially digitally, I mean, you think about how fast a Twitter feed goes down in news. It can be seconds till it's old news. And it all depends how many people are featuring it, doesn't it? Let's take something really out of this world, like the awards. Let's take the television awards or something like that, or the Oscars. Now, when does that become old news? It's almost within 24 hours, isn't it? Because everybody's featured it en masse and you're sick of seeing it all by then. So you disengage with it after 24 hours. Your news might be, great if you've won an Oscar, the industry Oscars, brilliant. And also, sometimes you'll find that magazines are working so far ahead that your news appears in a publication that doesn't come out for a couple of months from the time that you sent it, but it would still be relevant. So it might have appeared in the newspaper first, which is instant, and up online, which is even more instant. Well, I say the newspaper. Let's say you send it into an editor on a Monday. The newspaper comes out on the Thursday. If it's a weekly, it's current in that week. However, at the time, they may have put it up on their website, which is instant, and it stops being current within 48 hours, perhaps. Then also, let's say they produce a magazine. That magazine, it won't publish immediately because the lead-in time to a magazine is much longer. So it may come out a month later or 6 weeks later. But actually, it's a nice reinforcement. And that's why you should send slightly different things to that wave of different publications that it might appear in. So wouldn't it be great if you got your news article in print in that week's newspaper, then it went up online with your hyperlinks onto their digital platform, and then you sent in all the photographs that were relevant to that, as many as you can, that then featured as a social page or whatever it was in the magazine to reinforce it. 3 hits off one press release, really, that you've tailored, and people are seeing your business in that positive light 3 times. It's reinforced in 3 different ways: in print, online, in the newspaper, in a magazine, visually. It's really impactful and really powerful. And we've talked about sending out press releases. A lot of, certainly in tourism, is about inviting journalists in to experience what we've got. This is a completely different side to PR and a different proposition again, and needs to be managed very differently. I've lost count of the amount of times I've said, these are the stipulations that if we invite you here and you have this experience pro bono, then you must, this is what we insist goes into the article. And they might say, well, I can do that for this publication that I write for, but this publication isn't going to do that. And you go, okay, how can we negotiate on getting the best for us out of this? We're not doing this for nothing. We're doing this for a give and take thing. And that's what bringing press into you is about. You know, it's not a freebie.
I wouldn't have thought about that negotiation side of it. You're right. I mean, you're doing something for them. You're giving them content, and an experience which they can share. There's no reason why you can't negotiate that. And actually, they probably respect you more for doing that, because they see it's more professional. They understand that.
Well, you have to set the ground rules. You know, whenever we do anything, if you send a product to somebody, if you're investing in that, it costs you time, money. A lot of it is financial resource. Well, you've got to get some ROI on that, some return on that investment.
I like your thinking on that. And actually, something just to finish off, and the value, I think, in the value of getting someone like Heidi to work with you on your PR is that you just don't know what it is about your company or what you're doing that is newsworthy. I mean, we're very active. We do lots of things, but I do find it very daunting to think about what it is that we should talk about that is interesting. Just the other day, Claire and I were looking at what we can do if I'm going to deliver workshops or I'm trying to get an interview on some YouTube channel or something like that. What is the nub of what we're trying to do? What is our mission? What is a core thing that we can talk about? Really tough to figure that out. And so working with someone, a third party on that is crucial. Absolutely.
You're absolutely right. And I have to have a third party to work on my business with you on that PR side, who sees those elements that are everyday stuff to you. I'm doing it with our customers all the time. Here's an example. You've got a farmhouse B&B. She's baking biscuits every day for every set of guests that come in. And she said, I don't know what to put on my social media. And I walked in and I said to her, you baking biscuits? That's amazing. She goes, I do this every day. I say, but it's not every day for your visitors and your consumers. This is special. This is homemade. This is farmhouse eggs. This is, cream from the dairy cows. This is whatever it was she was doing. And she just didn't see it because that's every day. And anybody in their business finds it hard, and it's worth its weight. Even if you have a critical friend that says, why aren't you telling people about that?
Thank you very much for your time, Heidi. Really good for you to come on, and make sure you stay on for 15 minutes afterwards because we want to chat to you.
Okay.
For everyone else, thank you very much. We're here every Friday from 10 a.m. We cover everything from marketing, strategy, social, sometimes PR, SEO, video, and more. And if you have something exciting to share, and actually from a PR perspective, if you are doing something interesting in your company, it doesn't have to be specifically to do with marketing. There's always an angle on marketing. But if you're doing something interesting, get in touch with Claire, support@rivalinventive.com. Let her know what you're doing and we'll get you in. We like everyone else have content needs and slots to fill. So, do get in there. If you can't watch live, you can share the Zoom link with a friend. Just send it over to them. But to make it easier on us, copy us into that email and let Claire know so she can welcome them and we can, we know who's coming. Don't forget, you can catch up with every single webinar on Basecamp. We'll be moving them all over to our new website soon. So we'll let you know when that happens, but they're still all on Basecamp. Thank you everyone for watching and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.